Hello out there, and welcome everybody to my kitchen table launch of Ronan and the Mermaid, which is published today by Walker Books in London and available all over England and Ireland. And in about 6 weeks, it will be out in America as well from Candlewick. It's been 4 years since my story was accepted for publication, and it seemed a long, long time until today came. But it's finally here, and I'm delighted to show you this gorgeous book produced by Walker, with most sumptuous illustrations by Jordi Solano. And so I'm going to read you a little bit. So just sit back where you are and have a cup of tea or top up your mug of coffee and settle in and enjoy the story. And we'll begin. Long ago in Ireland, when fairy folk dwelt in the hills and merfolk swam in the seas, saints and holy men lived in little beehive huts scattered along lonely shores. These huts of wattle and thatch were the first abbeys. The ancient abbey of Bangor lay nestled on the edge of the Irish Sea. There the monks worked and prayed, their companions the seagulls flying in the wind and the seals basking on the rocks. Well, one day, after a wild storm, Brother Declan was out searching for driftwood when he came upon a circle of seals keening softly on the sands. In their midst lay a young boy, wisps of seaweed tangled in his hair and his eyes closed tight. He was wrapped in a shawl woven from seagrass, and a silver ring glistened in his outstretched hand. Declan looked up the beach and down, but there was no one in sight. He gazed over the water and glimpsed a flash of gold that shimmered by the great grey rocks. The old monk rubbed his eyes and looked again, but saw only white foam and swirling waves. The lines in his forehead deepened as he remembered the old tales of mermaids and sea people. He gathered the boy in his arms, put the ring in the pocket of his cloak, and brought him back to the abbey. I found him with the seals, he told the curious monks, and saying no more, he laid the boy in a bed of rushes and tucked the shawl around him. Brother Finbar kindled a fire till it crackled and sparked, and hung a basin of milk over the flickering flames. Brother Kevin unlaced his pouch of healing herbs and sprinkled a handful into the frothy milk. The room warmed with the scent of sage and rosemary. Abbot Congal himself dipped his fingers in a cup of holy water and blessed the child. Declan blew gently on the milk to cool it and held a spoonful to the boy's lips. With the first sip, the colour returned to his cheeks. With the second, he opened his eyes, and with the third, he eased himself up. He glanced wildly around and began pulling and tugging at his clothes, and then he sank back on the rushes and sighed in despair. Declan dug deep into his pocket and held out the ring. The boy's eyes widened. He reached for the ring and clasped it tight. He turned it over in his palm, and he wondered at the tiny L engraved upon it. "She gave it to me," he said, "the lady with the golden hair." And he told him his name was Ronan, and that he'd been fishing with his father when the storm blew in. They turned back to shore and tried to outrace the wind, but the waves caught them and tossed them out of their boat into the cold, wet darkness. My father could hold me no longer. I was swept out of his arms. And then the lady came. I thought it was a big fish, but her hair was long and golden, and she sang to me till we reached the shore. Ronan's eyes closed, and his voice grew softer. She pressed the ring into my hand and told me that one day I would help her. Brother Finbar and Brother Kevin looked at each other and shook their heads. They thought it was a fever talking. Brother Declan was not so sure. He thought of the sudden flash of gold by the rocks, and he remembered the legend of Liban, the princess turned into a mermaid, but he kept his thoughts to himself. "Let the boy sleep," he said. "He is feverish and needs rest." Ronan didn't wake till the moon set and the sun rose once more. Day by day, the boy's strength returned. Brother Finbar brought him a speckled egg every morning for nourishment, and Brother Kevin strewed herbs under his pillow to cure the fever. Brother Declan tied the ring on a linen cord and fastened it around Ronan's neck for safekeeping. And in the evening, Brother Declan would sit by the boy's bed and read him stories. He told him about Selkies, the seal people who could shed their skins on full moon nights and take on human shape. He told him about Liban, who was turned into a mermaid when a great lake flooded her home and drowned all who lived there. For 300 years she had roamed the lonesome seas. No one has ever seen her, the old monk said, but her singing has entered many a dream on quiet moonlit nights. Ronan's fingers strayed to the silver ring. In his heart, he knew it was Liban who had saved him. As Ronan grew stronger still and as sorrow eased, he began to help with the daily chores. Brother Finbar gave him a basket of willow and showed him where the broody hens hid their eggs under the bushes by the old oak. Ronan set out each morning with his basket swinging on his arm, but when he heard the blackbird singing in the treetops, he would stretch out in the long grass and close his eyes to listen. The brothers ate breakfast late on those days. Brother Kevin gave him a little jar with its very own lid and showed him where the wild herbs grew by the shore. Ronan filled the jar till leaves spilled over the sides. He squeezed the lid on tight and ran down to the water's edge, racing the seagulls and splashing the waves. But when he heard the seals singing out by the great grey rocks, he would sit down in the wet sand and listen, hoping to hear the mermaid's song. Now Brother Declan had seen the boy entranced by the song of the blackbird. He had watched him sit for long hours listening to the seals, and so he gave him the gift of music. A harp he fashioned himself, made from hazelwood and strung with silver. He showed Ronan how to balance it on his knees and cradle it against his shoulder. Ronan gazed at the harp in wonder. Sliding his hand over the polished wood and tracing the flowers and animals carved along the sides, his fingers trembled under the strings, slipping up and down the length of them. And then he pressed into the silver wires, pulled them towards him and let go. And when he did, music filled the air, pure and sweet as the peal of crystal bells. Abbot Congal himself came to listen. Ronan kept the harp with him always, and his melodies could soothe with the hush of the sleep song, fill the heart with joy, or soften sorrow with the pluck of a single harp string. When he played under the old oak, the blackbirds flew down to listen. And when he played by the shore, seals came up on the sands to hear him. But the melody he yearned for was the song of the mermaid. And one night, when the wind was still and the moonlight danced into his hut, Ronan was awakened by a sweet yet sorrowful singing that floated in from the sea. It was the song hidden deep in his heart. It was the song of the mermaid. He reached for the harp and sent the song ringing back to sea. And all that moonlit night, harp song and sea song echoed over the waves. Well, of course, now that Ronan has heard the song that he's been hoping to hear for so long, he has to go out and find her. And in the morning, he does go to Abbot Congal, and he gets permission to go out on the sea. And there he is, having found the mermaid. So today is a publication day, but it's a kind of a strange day. However, bookshops are selling online, and you can get Ronan and the Mermaid from any of your booksellers. And this is a great time to support your local indie bookshops. So I hope you enjoyed the story, and I'll be back with more stories soon. We might make this a thing. Bye, everybody.